I want to talk about how to best adjust to a new role, whether you got a new job or you move to a different position in the same company. I believe there are rules or stages during the process that once you recognize them and identify the right behavior and practice accordingly, it will help to manage the stress, to a new environment and prepare ourselves in a better position to success. I will cover three things in this video. First, who I am and why am I doing this. And the second, I will introduce the double H triple C journey that I summarized and I believe most of us will experience when moving to a new role. And then I will introduce in details of each stage in terms of what's the definition, what are the focuses, and what are the do's and don'ts in each stage. So this is me. My name is Haifang, and I'm a Chinese. And up until a couple of years ago, I spent all my life in China. I've been working many years in the area of lean operation and project management across different industries. As you can see here, I listed here failure versus success. Indeed, I have in all the projects I've been involved in operation I've been working on. Well, I had many failures, and of course there were successful moments that I cherish, of course. And I think as a result, what's been built into me is that I always strive to be better in work and better of myself. So as I mentioned, I moved to US 2 years ago and to study, to work, and to experience more. So in the past 2 years, I had the chance to experience multiple times of being the newcomers to the organization or corporation. And I think now I have my lesson learned that I want to share of how to cope with this onboarding process and how to better adjust it to a new role. And as you can see here, I am very passionate about sharing my experience and what I've learned, what I've summarized. And if there can be any aha moment from the audience because of this video, please do let me know. I will consider this sharing will be well worth it. And I am also very into stories, to novels. And I consider this storytelling as the best way to convey the message. So do expect that I have little stories along with my sharing. And I think above all, that's all the motives behind of why I'm doing this. Okay, here comes the journey of adapting to the new role in 5 stages. And imagine the first day for you to the new role. You are very excited and, of course, under pressure of showing the best good impression to the team. And at the same time, the HR and your boss, they are also very excited to have you finally and to take the tasks away from them. And then your supervisor will hold you accountable for certain tasks. And then you move on to connect the dots and figure out what's going on and started to solve the problems and the conflicts within the team. And in the end, when you reach to the maturity level of you know what your job are, what's expected, and of course, as a person with lean background, I intended to conclude any mature process with continuous improvement because indeed any process, whatever the maturity level is, there's always an opportunity to improve. Okay, looking back to this whole process, the duration of each process, each stage may vary greatly. For example, if you are promoted to a new role, but within the same function, the honeymoon would last very short because you know the job and you know the team and you just have a broader scope. and then you will quickly move to the next stages of holding you accountable and connect the dots, and then move to really solve the problem and the conflicts within the team. And that's probably where you would spend most of the time. And and indeed, people will also argue if you work long enough and you know what you want, what you need from the job, and if you decided you would want a good balance between work and life, and at the end of the process, it's unless there is a built-in mechanism within the organization for continuous improvement, and people will end this process by just getting new tasks and solving the problems and moving forward. And that's true and that's fair. Okay, now let's move on to details of each stage in terms of what are the focuses, and what are the pressure level, and what are the do's and don'ts. So let's talk about honeymoon. Imagine on the first day of your on job, and most likely you will be briefed by HR on company brochures, policies, compensation policies, and also need to sign a bunch of documentations. And then HR will tour you around the company and introduce you to each function leaders, and maybe to the colleagues that you met along the way. So during this stage, absorb the information like a sponge. I know the information may be overwhelming. Try to follow and try to absorb, because you have a next couple of weeks or at least a couple of days to assimilate them. And the focus of this area, this stage should be, try to figure out the organization chart, and to be clear on the relationships between different departments, and identify the key important persons, and try to know as many colleagues and as many people as you can. And those are the time that to build your connections, and which will be very helpful in your later work and job. And I think what you need to do is, in terms of the behavior, and the first of it, try to say hi to anybody you met when you feel comfortable, and take initiative to introduce yourself. And because what I've learned and I've observed, people are very curious, especially to the newcomers. But it takes courage to say hi. So if you are new here, and I think you have the advantage of you can go to there, say hi, I'm new, and my name is Haifeng, and blah blah blah. And when you try to know people, and try to know them as a person, show interest on their experience, and share your interest as well. Talk about your ideas on games, basketball, college league. The more you look at them as humans, and I think the relationship you build will be more personal, and which is definitely for sure more helpful. And think more about what kind of help you can offer to your colleague. For example, there's one colleague, and uh, he has left me with good impression. The way people in North America greeting each other is to say, "Hi, how are you today?" And normally it's just like something natural. They say, "How are you?" And you say, "I'm fine. Thank you." And how are you? So, but For me, I'm from China, and anyway, not maybe not because of my background, but I am not used to this kind of routine. You know, when somebody asks me how are you, I would actually think about it. You know, do I feel good or bad? You know, if I don't feel good, I would just say, oh, not so good. And sometimes it was not the answer they expected, and it turned out to be both sides are so embarrassed. And so there was a time when I talked with one colleague, and he asked me, "How are you today?" I said, "Oh, not very good." And then he laughed and he shared his experience. You know, normally, you know, we have, you know, emotions ups and downs, and but I would say that if somebody asked me how are you, I would say I'm living to dream. You know, your dreams could be good dreams, or it could be nightmare. And I took the advice, and next time when somebody asked me how are you today, I would say I'm living the dream. And then they laughed. You know, it feels it feels naturally. You know, things worked out pretty well. And this same person helped me out in two or three other occasions. They are very small reminders and small hints, probably experience shared. But I appreciate his help very much. And later on, I heard that this colleague and actually had a record of, you know, he got to the fastest promotion in the company history. So, which kind of makes sense to me, you know, because who wouldn't like a colleague who always think for you and who always is ready to help? So I am not sure about his other professional or skills, but I think definitely from this relation and management point of view, it makes sense. And as a summary of this stage's mental status, and I think first of all, we need to take initiatives, you know, to set up our target of every day, every week, every month, and think about how you plan to go through each day. And especially during this honeymoon, you probably won't be tasked, and you don't have much work to be done. And instead of waiting, you know, somebody come here and to tell you what to do, I think it's better that you have an idea of specific goals of each day, what you want to achieve. And and if you have a plan, you know, if somebody come to you say, hey, and can you do this or can you do that, I think you kind of get a you kind of have some power to say, hey, you know, I'm pretty engaged on these things, can I do this later? So you have some ideas on what you're doing, so you're managing yourself, and people will feel that for sure. And the next point would be the mindset need to be changed from I want this to I will do this and that. You know, it's it's very nice that each of us have ideas of what we like, what we don't like, but in terms of the execute, we need to have specific actions. You know, I used to have very variety, broad interests like swimming, you know, playing badminton, taekwondo. I tried sketching, yoga, you know, but in the end, I wasn't good at anything. So one of the most efficient way, you know, to be good at something or to really know something is you have to have a plan. So, you know, the plan. When I say plan, means when are you gonna do something, where and by when to achieve what. You have to be clear on everything so that all of this contributes to the fulfillment of the goals. Well, when you get to hold you accountable stage, now it's the time for you to contribute. and your supervisor will debrief you with specific tasks, and you will know your KPIs, and you may even be assigned to firefight. And the focus of this stage is still, and you need to know more about the assignment and through knowing your team members. And the best way to do it is to go to your colleague who has the similar tasks and talk with them and know more about the background and to make sense the tasks. And in terms of behaviors of don'ts and do's, and this is a stage where you want to listen more, you want to explore, and you want to ask questions. And in terms of questions, and we need to bear in mind that there are no questions that are stupid, especially if you're working in a cross-functional team, or if you are new, which is true that you are new to the team. So, ask whatever question you have in the mind, but in a polite and skilled way. Avoid to ask why, and always why, because it will give an impression of a very aggressive. And also get over the barriers of thinking that asking questions, especially what we think is simple or stupid, will expose our, ignorance of the situation. Now think it in a different way. Think of that each question you raised and each answer you get will help you to connect the dots in your mind, and it will make you be clearer than in a situation than before, and it will help you to be better, good at, to be better at your job. And the next of do's in terms of behavior is you always try to speak loud and firm. And I once interviewed one of my colleagues, and we don't have much interactions in work, but he sits beside me, and I can hear him talking, around me and moving, walking, and he always seems so confident, and he talked very loud and strong. So there was once I asked him, I was very impressed the way you talk over phone, because we sit so close, and the way even the way you walk, you show so confident on what you're doing. And you know what he said after he heard me? And he said, you're not the first one who gave me this feedback. I said, why? Why do you think, why do you think you're so different on this aspect? He said, probably because the way that I was raised, probably because of my mom. And, he had the idea that if there's something he doesn't know, there's nothing to be ashamed of, and he will admit it, but he will try to find the answer. I think that's the attitude, and we need to gradually build in ourselves, which is to speak loud and firm. And even if you don't know, there's nothing to be ashamed. It's just you just say that I don't know the answer now, but I can find it out offline. And as a result of this stage, you are now pretty much engaged with the team, and you already demonstrated who you are and how you work and how you behave and how others can expect from you. And now it's next step, and I said it in a way it's like step by step, but actually, next thing we're going to talk about connecting the dots, but you are actually connecting the dots right from the beginner. Sorry, right from the beginning. And so far, you've talked to people, you've collected information, and you start to assimilate them in your mind, and things start to make sense because overall, they have draw a whole picture in front of you, and you will know more on what you need to know, and you will go to talk with people, and so instead of passively receive the information, now you're actively collecting information. And this is what I call it connect the dots. So in terms of the behavior, what to pay attention during this stage is now first number one, number one, you always want to use a complimentary word to start a conversation. You know, uh, in the word, everybody, we are human beings, and we we are, and everybody, people like be complimented. But you want to avoid, to be you want to be solid when you're trying to compliment people. And for example, you want to be specific on what are the actions that they said or they had that you think they're really good. For example, there was a time when we had our town hall in a company, and the HR manager published the internal job openings and for the audience and ask for referral. And I had a few classmates. They're still in the school, and they will be ready to go to the job market. And then right after that town hall, right after I heard from our HR manager about the job openings, I wrote her email saying, dear blah blah blah, and I what you said and the message you delivered during the town hall was so clear that I took actions right away, and I checked our website on the job openings, and I think there's one position, and my classmates, he will be a perfect match. So this is things that I came up with, well, that I think is complementary, but and they are still very specific and concrete. And I think the second point is before we set out to collect information, we need to first educate ourselves into we have specific questions. And so in terms of how to educate, I'm sure each company or each organization they have their specific location where you can find information that will be helpful in, for example, some company intranet or learning sharing folders in the company's SharePoint. So where you can find information related to what you're interested with, go study them, and then form your specific questions. Why is that important to ask specific questions? Let's take a step back, considering in an organization, the higher level when you achieve and the less time you can allocate it to deal with each issues. So if somebody come to you and ask, I need this by when, I think most of the leaders will appreciate it because you save his or her time, and you also save your time. If there's something you need, and you need to know, you need to understand the situation completely until you can ask specific questions for support. And the last point I have on this stage is about how to manage upwards, which means your boss, or manage downwards, which means your subordinates. By setting up boundaries. For example, In an organization, we extend our understanding of this organization by interpreting behaviors of people around us, right? Our colleagues, our supervisors, and if we find out something which is not acceptable or very unprofessional in our culture, what would you do? If this is the behavior you find out from your supervisor, which you define it as very unethical or unprofessional, what would you do? Would you hold a grudge against that person, or would you feed back to that person upon the impact of his behavior and your expectation? So I had an experience, about setting up the boundaries. That was a time I was working in the factory, and I was leading the routine 5S activities with the plant manager. And it was right. I remember so clearly that it was right after right after a weekly 5S audit, and we're about to close. And then I saw and I hear my boss, he spilled on the floor. And imagine, you just finished a 5S audit, which everything is supposed to be clear and clean and in order. And one manager, one leader spill on the floor. Although it's outdoor, but it's still, not acceptable. It was not acceptable absolutely for me at that time. And right after he spilled, he said, "Okay, that was over. Let's get back to what we need to do." I was standing there for like 5 minutes, struggling. This is unacceptable. What should I do? I want to go there and tell him right away what he did. It was wrong. He should never do that, especially in front of the team. And but the consequences could be very you couldn't imagine, right? Or should I just let it go and pretend nothing happened and just move on? And in the end, after battling with myself for about half an hour, and I decided I want to confront him and somehow politely, but deliver the but I want to I want to tell him that what he did was not acceptable and should not never happen, but in a polite way. I forgot what I said exactly, but it ended well. In the end, before I even want to go details of my express my feelings, and he got to the point right away, and he apologized. Say, "Oh, I'm so sorry," things. He started to explain, and he made it clear that it will never happen. And we end up very well. He was new to the plant. I don't know him much. Through this through this I this stage, we know better about each other, and we tend out to work together pretty smooth, and I would say in the end. So as a summary, I would say during this stage, your mental mind, you should always keep it open-minded and stay curious. Without bias. Try not to be biased. I know people are biased in nature, and trying be um, to be curious, and also you need to be very clear on what you're up to. You inside you need to be firm and you need to be clear. And besides that, be prepared to take on more things. Don't concentrate on this is what I need to do within my responsibility. This is out of my responsibility. Be kind of flexible and avoid being rigid. And I think as a result of this stage, and now you have your opinions because you see the whole picture, right? And pretty soon your opinion matters, and that's what we're going to discuss in the next phase. And now we get to the most fun part of this day, this process is, handling conflict and solving the problems. And is conflict or problems a bad thing? Or, well, nobody would say they're good, right? But we have to admit it is almost unavoidable to have conflicts and problems during work or even in life. So I would say that in terms of the how to handle the conflict and solving the problems, first of all, be creative. We have to understand the purpose of the conflicts. Is it just venting, or you're trying to solve the problems and you're trying to achieve something which is tangible, or apart from being emotional. If you are certain that you want to achieve some tasks rather than blaming or venting your emotions, try to be creative. And I think everybody can be a little bit creative. One example from my experience is there was one time I used beans to solve my conflicts pretty well. The background was I was trying to push a project to be executed, but one of the key resource that I require, that person, he's obviously very overloaded. When people are obviously overloaded, they become into grumpy, nothing pleasant to handle. And then, I don't want to blame anybody. That's not my purpose. But still, without the support, it's a very unlikely that I can finish this task. So I was thinking, and I started to talk with one of my colleagues who is also handling projects. I kind of venting and complaining in front of her, and she said, "Oh yeah, no, it happens. Why don't you try some beans? Put it on his table. Just write a poster on it and say what are the tasks. Write down the tasks and give him a smiley face. That's what I would do." And yeah, I think well, it doesn't hurt to try it. And then I did that, and in the result, in the end, the task was finished, on time. So I guess when you're trying to handle something, it's very intangible. It's depended by people. You have to be creative on how to deal with it. And I would say the next one is you don't want to rely on others to achieving the key objectives, especially that is very important to you. And because we have to understand that each of the person from different roles, we have different priorities, and your priority might not be the priority of others. So before you develop trust, before you know who you are dealing with, you should never ever rely on others, on your important objectives. And I have one more thing about how to handle difficult person. Well, there are people, we all agree that they look to be very difficult, and But remember, that could be just our bias. And before we know what's going on, the first strategy should always be, try to achieve peace, and if you find somebody who is not your cup of tea, if you can, try to stay away from him or her. And if you can't, try to find some common ground that you can make peace. I think in the end, on this stage, in terms of a mental mind, it is crucial that we should avoid the feeling of being the victim, because of what he did, and look, I was put in a miserable situation. Try not to think that way, because it's not going to help. And trying to think of something, trying to focus on things that you can control and you can make a difference. And I think through managing this constructive conflict, and in the end, you will gain more confidence over the situation. And so far, you are in good shape. You have the whole picture. You have your painting out of it, and you already had a few conflicts with your teammates or your colleagues, and you are managing it well. So but you still will have new tasks. Maybe your boss will be changed. You have new colleagues, new subordinates, and you will repeat the same process again and again until you are fully, engaged in the process, and until you're not new anymore. People know you and they know what to expect from you. And I'd like to conclude this process with a PDCA process. That's what that's what we use during a Kaizen process. It's plan. You have your plan, and you do accordingly. But you also check whether the result is what you expected, and you act upon what your findings through the process. And PDCA, and I think it's a very valid process, and to make sure that we have the continuous improvement, we have ourselves ready in the new role. And now is the end of the sharing, but I would love to hear your feedback on this topic of how to better adjust to your new role. You could either go to this English or Chinese version of the forum to provide the feedback, or just to shoot me a message or email. Shoot me an email on this email address of 53468689 @qq.com. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Bye bye.